All right, we're live. We're here. Have you been on StreamYard before?
Never. I mean, you've been.
So you're a virgin.
Ooh.
Okay, so I knew that would make you laugh. See, it's going to be one of those days. So,
it's so naughty, and we're just starting.
I know. So anything can happen on the decision table, by the way, and that's what this is about. We are, just a platform where, I don't know, I get to, I've said this to you before, that I get to have these amazing conversations, and sometimes I feel spoiled because I've just had this amazing conversation and I wish the world could listen in on it, kind of thing, right? And so this is what this is. I think that, for anything to change going forward, we have to look at doing things differently. And part of that is me committing to having new conversations every day right now, and with different people from looking through different lenses. And, me, Juliet, my whole thinking is around, what if we could see humanity as stakeholders at the decision table, right? And so I believe that's part of this new approach to leadership that I'm really seeing is needed, and then asking these questions going, what can it look like? What does it need to look like? And so hopefully throughout our conversation today, we'll pull some little insights from your world and how that can look. So for those that are listening, I know we're on early today. What time is it where you are, Juliet?
It's 10:15 p.m.
So it's 10:15. So I know it's only a few minutes early. It's like 15 or so minutes early, but I thought for Juliet's sake, we should, make an exception and pull it forward even just 15 minutes. So, Juliet, when you hear me say things like a need for a new approach, what does that bring up inside of you?
Excitement, because you recognize it, and I know other people recognize it. And, this absolutely is the time. I guess it's always the time, but right now there are some incredible, obviously difficulties and challenges, but also incredible opportunities. And I just see and experience and participate in a kind of uprising of people joining hands together and doing good, and just overcoming barriers, actually almost pretty naturally. I mean, there's no need for actual revolutions. The system seems to be changing because we are just brave enough to finally say, hey, we'd love to change it, and here's what I'm going to do, and here's what you're going to do. Let's do it together. And so I can see it already.
Okay, so you're saying the system is changing and people are getting brave enough. Tell me more about those two things.
Well, I think that right now the world is in this kind of fascinating, possibly scary, depending on the way you look at it, place where obviously we've got the global pandemic and all the immediate impacts of that, and the economic shocks. We've got the interesting policy responses to that with sort of repressive lockdowns. We've got the rise of nationalism in many countries. We've got changing, the sort of splintering of democracy with Britain leaving, Brexit, etc. And many nations somewhat, not all of them, but many of them sort of looking like they're pursuing a me first strategy. Certainly that was the case in the US until hopefully Wednesday, when things have changed. So there's kind of all of this stress and pressure, and I feel like we're in a kind of pressure at a pressure point now where, yes, things could go horribly wrong, but there's so much goodwill and so many people who are kind of like, okay, and people are at sort of breaking point, and that's not to be played down, because it's a horrible thing, and a lot of people are suffering more than before, I think. But I also see, I'm kind of an eternal optimist. I also see this, as I said.
You are?
Yeah, I am. And this opportunity to kind of just, I don't know, take that entrepreneurial approach to get things done that make a difference and help people. And so I've taken us off the topic already. But
that's what we do here. So don't worry. I love it. What is
but that's
the
what I
topic?
see.
Where is it? Where do we go? I mean, that's all part of our conversations, right?
Well, that's true. That's how people talk. So the systems that I were referring to was kind of democracy was, which has been flawed for a long time. It's just we're seeing it much more now. It's capitalism, which has just got out of hand, I think. We've already seen before that communism didn't work so well either. So I just feel that there've got to be some new, nationalism I don't think is necessarily the answer. Globalization, I feel like I'm a global citizen. So I've always thought that, together, working globally is the way to go. But that seems to have created, some disparities as well. I think every system, so that we thought of so far has. So it's time for a new system. I don't think we can push into any one of those old systems. They don't really work for everybody. And I think that we need to just kind of, be prepared to think, okay, we're in the messy middle and it's going to be messy for,
so is it pieces of all those different ones, or is it a whole new system in that way? How do you think about that?
I think we're kind of inventing it together. So I highly doubt any one person can see it as that kind of huge eagle vision. You can see bits of it, and I think that's part of the reason why we need to come together kind of more than ever, so that we can put together. It's like piecing a patchwork, I suppose, or like a patchwork quilt, isn't it?
Yeah, because I spend so many hours patching. I don't even know how to say it.
Me too. Non-domestic goddess.
Times 2.
I know what they look like.
I saw it once on a movie.
Exactly. So you have your skill and your piece and your understanding of the vision. And actually, when you put it with someone else, I know that you are someone who can see how much that amplifies it. Other people get nervous because they're like, it's mine and I need to hold on to mine and I'm not sure I can share it because, what if it gets worse? And that's actually really just a kind of big fear thing. But you are one of those people who can go and say, okay, if I put my piece with yours and, some of the pieces I'm going to put it next to are more marvelous than mine and better stitched and they've got golden thread and mine's a bit shabby in this corner and I'm slightly embarrassed by that bit. But still, the whole just works so beautifully. And it's the only way we're going to get to do it. I really think so.
So a new approach for you, part of that would be more collaborative style.
Definitely more collaborative. Yeah.
I like that. You know me, I love collaboration, but I honestly don't think, and I said this the other day on a decision table, but I really struggle to see great examples of collaborative styles out there, because, and as long as we, there's this awareness around the importance of having different distinctions at the table, and yet it's not done that well. And people are scared because if they say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, offend someone. And so actually that makes it even harder to get, more people at the table in a lot of ways. And it's actually easier again to get more of the same people, because at least I know how to talk to you and I know how to not upset you, and I'm not going to say the wrong thing and get myself sued or shut down. I don't know. These are kind of real things. So on one hand, we want this collaborative new style coming into it, but then how does that work with what's happening right now? Or what do you see?
Well, I think that and I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, but I think that the media is really stoking all these divisions between people, and that we are kind of getting more and more divided. And it's also partly just the algorithms on social media.
Oh, totally.
And so, which we, frankly, we're all addicted to in one way or another. Most of us
and
are.
I think that's the bigger issue. It's yes, these algorithms are in place, but the worst thing is now it's become an addiction. So whether it was you were meant to get yourself down that rabbit hole and then begin to have this opinion or see it as, well, we can't do this or that or whatever, it's now become so ingrained in our DNA in a lot of ways because of what we're listening to. So, sorry, carry on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we've kind of, you know, whether it's kind of somebody's cunning evil plan or not, it doesn't really matter. The point is, we've sort of been corralled into this way that we don't see other options, and we don't talk to each other. We don't even look for middle ground. We're just like, well, you know, you have this opinion, which is just clearly stupid. And then, and if I say you're stupid, then why would you even listen to me? Because, you know, that's not a very good way to have open a conversation. Furthermore, I'm probably not even going to ask you anything because I'm sitting there thinking I'm the right one. You're just wrong. And everything is right and wrong and black and white and this and that and very extreme, you know, right wing and left wing and blah, blah, blah. And in fact, interestingly, we've been taught that in some of the online businesses to do that in marketing, to be very polarizing, so that the people who support you will come and support you. But I actually think that's the wrong approach, because there's, you know, how are we ever going to build these bridges and build this collaboration if we just continue to fan these divisions and fan this thinking that is not about options? It's about, I put my head down and run in one direction. I don't listen to anyone. I don't look up until I've got there. And if there's a barrier, I'm just going to carry on pushing through. Well, believe me, I've tried carrying on pushing through and it doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, but a lot of the times it just hurts your head, you know, smashing that wall. And and actually, then when I look around and think, I was really self-righteous about that. And that's kind of, you know, then I have to kind of live with myself and think, oh, that wasn't very nice. You know, I like to think that I'm a nice person and that I'm not judgy. But actually, really, I am quite judgy. Because
so how do we, maybe part of this new approach is that, you know, we're less judgy, right? I always say this is what I love about the decision table. Like, there is no right or wrong. And just know that probably I'm not going to even necessarily going to agree with everything that you say at the table. But that's part of what we need to have. We need places where we can start doing this. How do you see it? How do you see us being less judgy? How do you see us not letting our biases take over that moment? You know, it's like seeing someone who is in a certain dress and then putting a label on them, or seeing someone who you know, maybe in many colors, many situations, it's been colors and the biases that you have because you see a color. You know, how do we get past some of these things that really bring judgment because of biases we have either got or we are getting because of maybe environmental, maybe other things? I don't know. Any insights around that?
Well, I think that I mean, I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm not a guru, NB.
No, but here's the thing, and why I'm asking you these questions is because all the time we're looking, I want to see through your lens. I see it through my lens, but maybe you see it through a different lens that I could actually learn from, or I can gain some more insights to why that's even more, you know, something that is a good thing to take on. So no judgment in a new approach, or leaving behind judgment and moving into no judgment zones. How do we do that? What could that look like? Why would we do that?
Why would we do it? I think because we could make a lot more progress if we could even very simply just go down to what are our commonalities. You know, when you're sitting there next to your enemy, let's say, I'm again giving an extreme example because that's
I love working with extremes, you know that, so bring it on.
So if you're sitting there next to your enemy and you're kind of pre-triggered before you've gone in, because you're kind of like, what are they? You're suspicious of them, or you're angry at them, or you're remembering all the things that, you know, they've done wrong, or imagining all the things that could go wrong, or whatever it is. That's how you walk into a room with some, you know, or even actually you might not even walk into the room like that, but when you see them, you're like, oh my gosh, or something worse. And, you know, why the heck is that person here, etc. So, I mean, that's part of it, isn't it? That we have we have so much thinking that some of it's almost kind of instantaneous. It's not really thinking. It's just a thought has appeared and we kind of go along with it. So I think it's about being self-aware a lot. And this is not always easy, but I think it's taking time out during the day to just perhaps go over some situations that you think could have gone better and just analyzing them and then trying to really, really working hard to understand another view. Because the truth is, yes, of course, there are a few psychopaths in the world, but they're not as many as we think they are, because we've sort of glorified them in Western conversations and media, films, etc. But there aren't really that many. So most people are actually genuinely doing their best, and then they'll have a reason for doing what they think is right that you might think is wrong or cruel or oppressive or whatever it is. And they may not even see that because they're trying to do the right thing, and they probably also, at night think, well, I made the right decision, and that Juliet I've just met, she was so wrong. I can't believe it. She couldn't even see my view. So I think it's really about being a bit more aware. It's about taking time, when you can, pockets of time to kind of analyze situations that you think could have gone better, and then or that surprised you even, and what could be behind that, and just stretching your mind to think of 5 reasons why they acted that way, whether you agree with them or not. I think that's quite helpful. That's one thing. I'm really lucky because I have been an intercultural trainer, so I get to train people from one culture who move to another culture, and I did a training last week with someone from China who moved to Kenya, and could see so much incredible things, probably that Kenyans can't even see about themselves, quite honestly. They take it for granted because you've got this new fresh mind, as it were, and fresh insight, as you say, a fresh way of looking at things. And some things are a bit baffling because they seem wrong in your culture, perhaps. And some things are delightful because you wouldn't normally do them that way, but it's actually better. You think, oh, that could be kind of nicer. So one thing that we teach people is how to kind of assess a situation and just think about different attitudes as they're on a gradient. So, our traditional right and wrong, but we know there's all these kind of shades of gray in between. And this person is absolutely adamant at something I think is wrong. And do I shift how I behave a little bit more towards them? Or do I go a bit more towards my way? Or, how can we resolve the situation? And it's so fascinating because can I give you an example?
Of course.
I won't give you the example from this particular person because of confidentiality, but the classic example is you're driving along in a car. Can I do it with you, Karen? You're driving along in a car. Actually, you're not driving. You're in the passenger seat, and a friend is driving, and you're having a deep conversation.
I'm feeling car sick already.
Okay.
Just kidding. Okay, sorry. Yes, just kidding.
And you're chatting away to them, and you're just kind of looking at somewhere you've never been. So sort of looking out at the road and seeing the pedestrians and the trees and the whatever else you see. And you see a sign.
There's a zebra. Oh no, sorry, wrong country.
Oh my gosh, you're in my hometown.
I'm just around the corner, Juliet.
Woo! Maybe I'm driving. Although I hope.
Here we go.
Anyway, so you're looking around and you see a sign happens to kind of catch your eye, and it says, let's say it says 50, and it's the speed limit. And so you're just kind of chatting away, blah, 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 and you happen to look at the speedometer of the car, and you see that the driver is doing a little above that, maybe 55, maybe 60.
Juliet.
And why is it? You know what I'm like? Speed monster, speed queen.
Exactly.
So I can't in Zimbabwe. There's too many potholes. But anyway,
true.
So you happen to say that your friend is speeding, and before you have a chance to say anything, do anything, think, because you're looking this way, bang, you've hit a pedestrian. Now fast forward 3 months, and you're in court, and this is the system in this legal system in this country. You're in court, and the judge says to you, Karen Marie, do you know if your friend was speeding? What are you going to say? Now, don't say it, but I bet you already know what you do. I bet you know instantly. And what you know instantly is what you think is the right thing. Correct? Of course it is. You're not going to do the wrong thing. So depending which culture you come from, for instance, the classic example is 97% of Americans would say my friend was speeding. And 96 or so, or you'd have to check the figures, but it's around about then, of Koreans would say either I don't know anything about it, I wasn't really paying attention, or they would just basically cover for their friend, regardless of the outcome of the pedestrian.
Interesting.
And this is the really interesting part is Koreans then take that and they say, how can you trust an American? They don't even stand up for their friends.
Ah.
And Americans say, how can you trust a Korean? Because they lie.
Yeah.
And it's just what you see as right and wrong is different. So in Korea, loyalty to it's a collectivist culture, loyalty to your tribe and your friends is much more important than, the truth in that situation.
Yeah.
And Americans are like, the law is the law and it's always right. By the way, it's not always well used in some countries. Perhaps it is in America, perhaps it isn't. But that's the kind of conditioning thinking so that most people would. So so you have that view. So so it's quite interesting that you're kind of conditioned through your life to have a lot of moral decisions, and you're not even aware of them because they're normal to you. That's your norms. And so if you want to be able to collaborate with people who is your traditional enemy or who you see as having such an opposing opinion to you, you've got to be prepared to just shift the way you think, basically.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is becoming aware, right, of creating, I talk about in this new approach, the need to curate safe spaces. And I really do say safe because I think there are spaces at times, but they're not always safe to bring your distinctions to the table, the things that are important to you. And then I think, part of that awareness is actually listening. Is the fact that, I love the way that you just, it's a different perspective, like looking through different lenses and getting different perspectives. But what a great way that you just said that. And, I think that we often don't listen. We listen. No, we listen with going, what is our next intent to be heard here, rather than actually listening and going, what is it I could take from this? What is it that I'm going to leave behind? Because I think that, and this goes, and I talk about this a lot, but the muscle of human intelligence, that, part of human intelligence is actually humans thinking for themselves again. I think part of the conditioning, part of the problem of the systems that we've had is that we've got kind of so used to doing things a certain way, so used to be told what to do, that we're actually forgetting to think for ourselves or think for our fellow humans, right? And so where that muscle is no longer either existing or it's very weak because we're not using it. I don't know. What do you think on that side of it?
Oh, absolutely. I do agree with that. And I think it's also partly to do with social conditioning and us just no matter how much we declare that we are independent and we don't need anybody.
Exactly.
We all do want to belong. And then the third thing is the brain wiring, right? Is how you wire your brain. So if you get into habitual ways of thinking and then you sort of automatically have that reaction without even having kind of consciously analyzed what just happened and then reacting. It's just kind of boom. And you don't question that because that's the shortcut thinking, isn't it?
So for me, that would mean patterns would be very solidly put into the way that systems are run, or, the patterns behind a lot of this is that, the biases have come because we're so conditioned to these patterns. That's a hard thing to change. And in a lot of cases, many would say that's just way too hard. And you see it. You see a lot. I mean, in the country that you're living in, you see a lot of the devastation from bad choices or bad decisions or bad patterns, right? And in some ways, I mean, you must get to moments where you go, this is just all too big. I don't even know that I can make any difference here. And yet you continue to. So where does that come from?
Which bit? The motivation to continue?
I don't know. You tell me.
Just had a moth fly into my hair. It all happens on this show. There was quite a lot. I'm just trying to unpack what you said because there was quite a lot into it, and I started thinking away.
We'll go down the where you're thinking, and we'll come back to some of the other bits. We can do that. That's how we roll.
Well, that's true. That's true. There's no correct way, no right way, no wrong way. I mean, I do think habitual thinking is very common, and it is about patterns, and it is about interrupting patterns. I think we find if we need to, or if something big is happening, it's very easy for us to change a pattern. I think actually change. We have a good big story, which, by the way, I'm fully subscribed to. That change can be incredibly hard, especially kind of personal change. And I'm a behavior change expert. And there are some habits of mine that I find really hard to change. And I think it's partly a story because I also have seen that change can happen literally just like that in a total instant. I mean, the world changed when the pandemic came. If the world can change in an instant, I guarantee you and me can change. And we have done it before.
Totally.
And we can do it again. It's just whether we kind of allow ourselves to trust it and all of the, and whether we'll just step into it and own it. And I find if I'm taking kind of a big leap, I think you've seen me several times take a big leap and do something that was scary or really different or uncomfortable.
Well, use the example of the project that you're working on now.
Well, what aspect of it? So yeah, I'm working in Zimbabwe, and I'm helping address the oxygen shortage for COVID response basically in the country. And it's a political minefield.
Yeah,
really.
But the thing was that I wanted to bring out of that was you weren't doing that, say, well, you were a year ago probably now, but 2 years ago, like that wasn't even probably on your radar, right?
I didn't even think about it in February last year, and then March came.
February.
March came, COVID came, and this thing was bigger than me, and somebody needed you to do something. And the hilarious thing, Kerry Marie, is I went around kind of disabling myself, going, someone needs to do something. And at least I didn't just give up at that, but I kind of went to several people and said, will you do this?
Yeah.
And they were like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And I'm like, oh sugar, it's going to have to be me. So I did, rather to my astonishment. But the moment you take a leap and then you suddenly realize, oh my goodness, I'm out in this new, uncomfortable, slightly scary place.
Slightly scary.
Feeling exposed, perhaps, and kind of not like I have enough support or whatever. And it's just that it's really uncomfortable. And it's tempting.
It's such a nice way, Juliet, that you're saying that. It's just really uncomfortable. By the way, Juliet's had a lot of challenges hit her. It is more than uncomfortable. Just for the record, I'd like to state right here, it's a little uncomfortable. Yes. Anyway,
there have been moments when I've just
I love when friends come on here and it's a little uncomfortable. I'm like, girl, I've seen some of those moments in your world that are a little uncomfortable. And I would say they were less uncomfortable and just devastating. Honestly, sometimes on our monthly call, I'd get off from Juliet and I would literally cry for you, your country, what you go, because you are in the midst of really challenging things. And I know sometimes you can't talk about it, particularly in open spaces, but, things that we are so fortunate. We can walk down our streets. We can go to the shelves and find the food that we want on the shelves. We don't have to, what is it? Have to park it, like for ages waiting for petrol for the car. We don't have to go to other countries to try and find what we need as medical supplies or anything else. We have it in our own little suburbs, let alone in our country, a lot of this stuff. So, it does break my heart that there are still nations and places across the earth where this is the norm. And I think that and I do get cranky about it and I get upset about it because I hear so many complaining about, and I call it all the time, first world problems. Anyone that knows me in my world, I say that's a first world problem. I do it to myself all the time because if I start whinging about something, I go, this is a first world problem. And I go, my perspective goes back to, oh my goodness, you know that little uncomfortable moment that Juliet talked about today? Right? Because that's perspective. I go, okay, my little uncomfortable moment was really different to that uncomfortable moment that Juliet was speaking about today. And the fact that she has people that work within her and they need medication, and that medication is really hard to get hold of. I remember those little things because I have a son who is epileptic, and if he doesn't have his medication, that would cause absolute chaos for him. And so those little things mean a huge amount to me because I go, I'm able to get that. I go to the pharmacy, I put a prescription in, I get something out. What would it be like being in a country? And I, you know, having traveled the world and knowing I count all the medication that he's got to be on, and I make sure that we've got enough as we've traveled. I've got extra in case we get stuck in a country. You know, like I know that kind of fear of, oh, what if you run out? But I don't really, because I don't live where there isn't any access to it, right? So your uncomfortable moments is what I'm trying to say are a little more uncomfortable than many of the listeners. And I just want to put a bit of perspective on that, because I always, you know, you give yourself a hard time, Juliet, but anyone on here, by the way, Kimberly says, hello, Juliet. Kimberly Brenner. But anyone that's on here, give love to Juliet, man. She deserves it, because her little uncomfortable are way more than your uncomfortable, probably. Just a bit of perspective there.
But Kiri, I know you would totally do what it takes. I mean, this is the crazy thing. I do live in a place where our normal kind of behaviors to get simple things like food and fuel and medicine are by much of the world insane. And to get medicine, you have to hire someone to go on a bus to another country to buy it. You need to give them foreign currency cash. They have to smuggle it. They have to bribe the I
wanted to say all that, but I didn't want to because I wasn't sure if I was allowed to. So
I think you can tell that story.
Okay, good.
Even if you buy it from a pharmacy, basically they've done that. Because they can officially bring it in, but it's very difficult. It takes a long time, and they can't wait, because something like diabetes medicine or epileptic medicine or whatever it is, something you need, you know, you can't wait. We can't wait. You can't sit there being delayed for 3 months at the border while some dispute is being resolved or something. So I mean, it's kind of become a whole system, and although that's pretty shocking if you're looking from the outside, it is kind of our norm. And you know, it has taught people here, I see in Zimbabwe and other developing countries, the incredible amount of kind of resilience and entrepreneurial thinking, because you can't wait for anyone to come and rescue you. You know, you can't, the state is never going to pay you a pension or provide you free healthcare or give you food if you're starving. You've got to make a plan. So if you sit around and complain, which, I mean, look, we all do because we're human, but if you do it for too long, that's it. Curtains, basically.
You die.
So people, you die. So people figure out other ways. And part of the amazing thing about that is that they collaborate. You know, we do have these collaborations and systems. Can't remember if I told you this story, but some years ago we had national petrol shortages, and all the fuel in this country is imported, and there was some dispute with whoever we were importing it from, another country, and so there was a blockade or whatever it was, and for whatever it was a political reason, but there was none available. And so 6 months later we're like, so either the economy completely fails because no one can get to work, no one can you know, take their produce to market, nothing is going to happen, or we've got to make a plan. So it's kind of the unofficial motto of this country is Zimbabweans make a plan. And literally me and my neighbors, we were fairly new at this point. It was probably 15 years ago. So we did not come up with this plan at all. Now I think I'm a bit more entrepreneurial thinking, but at that point I was like, oh my goodness, this is insane. I'm just going to get a bicycle. That was as far as I got thinking, and you know, reduce my radius to sort of within a very close 5 kilometer radius, basically. But no, my neighbors got together and they knocked on the door and they said, hey, Juliet, we are pooling our funds, and we're going to charter a tanker by 20,000 litres of fuel from South Africa. And so we're asking you, will you buy 1,000 litres? So there's 20 people. It's $1,000. Will you wire $1,000 to this account in South Africa? That was not the name of the petrol company, by the way. And hope that you just have to trust us. And we were like, okay, yeah, we'll do it. So we wired the $1,000, and in due course, a week later, 2 weeks later, the petrol tank came, and then it transpired that we had to hire a petrol station. Well, I mean, I wouldn't know where to begin. Do you? It's not something you normally do. but this
it's not something I've done lately.
Just go and ask. Let's go and speak to this guy. So all the petrol companies were mandated to stay open, even though there was no fuel. So they still had attendants sitting around. They were still paying their staff and no money coming in. So they were quite grateful to rent out their little tanks and underground tanks, 20,000 litre tanks, not that little. And then they said, please, could we all come and collect the petrol? And then, I mean, even as an individual, 1,000 litres, unless you've got a lot of cars, we only had one that took that kind of fuel. How the heck are we going to store it? So then we had to run around and buy metal barrels, and, and then go and collect all the fuel.
And hope no one lights a match. And
hope no one lights a match. And meanwhile, it's declared illegal to store fuel in barrels. So then we were like, well, now what? Anyway, so we just made another plan, because you make a plan and then you find it doesn't solve everything, but then you make the next plan and then you make the next plan. And it's just a really helpful way of getting through a hugely complex situation. Because, I guess it's kind of like eating the elephant one bite at a time. I don't really like that phrase, but everyone knows it. You focus
because you live around elephants as well. So
I know, and I quite like them. I think
they're awesome.
I don't think I'd eat them.
They're huge.
They are huge, yeah.
I'd get very full. That would,
you probably would, yes. Well, no one said it had to be at one meal, did they? But that's
true. Good point. Anyway, yes. I was just thinking, would I eat an elephant?
Well, you would if you were starving, I'm sure. But
I know, but see, we eat kangaroos here. And some would say, oh, you're eating Skippy, the kangaroo. So, and I had a pet lamb, and I know I became a vegetarian for a long time after my pet lamb because I didn't want to eat lambs. I know. So I guess it's just not my norm to have an elephant out my backyard and think, oh, I'd have a bite. Anyway, sorry, I got rather distracted by the elephant story. I mean, it wasn't even a story, was it?
Garden, but it's pretty cool.
Isn't that funny? Hey, you talk about resilience, and I think that is such a I think that's what we need as leadership. We need to have resilience, that there are the pressures that are going to come along. There are the challenges. How do we do leadership in a new way really well? Right? With resilience is part of that. How do you see we can be more of a resilient leadership or leaders out there across the globe?
How can we build resilient leaders?
Or how can we be more resilient as leaders?
Be more resilient leaders?
Yeah, either. Both.
I think we can be more resilient leaders by giving ourselves that. Well, I mean, we've sort of covered it before. It's by being able to shift our style and our view so that we can see take other people's views into perspective, and then build collaborations. And that's how you become a leader. You can't really be a leader on your own. Although I've tried it for years and years and years.
Did it work? No.
No, dang it.
No.
I know, it's kind of weird, isn't it? So yeah, that's one thing. And how we build resilient leaders, I think, are by ourselves being role models, and also identifying role models and kind of shining a light, amplifying what they're doing. Connecting people is so important. And I think also connecting, I love the idea of unlikely partnerships, unlikely collaborations.
It's the best, right?
It's the best. They do seem to be really productive, I find. And so because people are free of that kind of particular way of thinking. So for instance, when we had to make a ventilator as part of our oxygen therapy support project for Zimbabwe, Kufema, the people who designed it, we had I don't know, 500 volunteers at the beginning. And then, some of them got tired because it takes time, and all the borders were closed. We couldn't bring anything in. It was a tough assignment. And so people dropped away. And the core group that stayed and worked every day for 3 months with no pay, in a country with 97% unemployment, where the economy is really bad and people really do need the salaries, it was kind of amazing. The guys who stuck it through were students. And none of them were the right kind of engineer. None of them was a biomedical engineer. We did have advisors. We did have, the right people to make sure that we wouldn't do anything dangerous. But the guys who were getting on with it, one was an electronic engineer. One of them hadn't graduated, and one of them is doing his degree now. And they got on really well. They figured it out. They just had a go. They were fearless, and they just kept going. And and I just was so impressed by that. And it's just not that they were unlikely, because they were still engineers, but I couldn't help thinking that even when we linked them to some top global, they were linked to the MIT team in the US, some top engineers, and I overheard a comment somebody made, oh, now we're working with the best brains on the planet. And I was like, yes, but can they make something out of the things that we have to make things out of?
Yeah.
Can you take a Toyota windscreen wiper motor and make a ventilator that's going to be reliable and not kill someone from? Well, our guys can, and they did, so I just was these unlikely ways of thinking and unlikely partnerships that spark things and bring it to life. And I think that as leaders, it's incumbent on us to give people a kind of a chance to really say what they think, and to invite people to the table who aren't normally there, and then empower them. You can't just bring people in and dump them and hope that they will be able to speak up and say what they really think, because it can be pretty intimidating.
Just a little.
So you have to kind of, bring them along and show them things, and show them the behind the curtains, and be really frank with people and say, it took me decades, Kerry Marie, because I didn't really come from the business sector at first. I came from international development. So it took me decades to realize that business leaders knew not very much more about business than anybody else. And a lot of being a good business leader is being able to make it up and just make a decision, act confident. Obviously, you try and get the information you have, but there's no kind of bright, shiny answer. Well, as a consultant, the way that I came from, I had to give bright, shiny answers. So I assumed that business people had them all the time. And now I'm like, when I go and talk to young entrepreneurs, I'm like, just so you know, everybody makes it up, and it's okay. By telling them that, it's such a relief. You can see them. They're like, oh. I mean, they're a bit shocked when you talk about their heroes, but I think it's important to be that honest and just explain that, and kind of put some seed, kind of like drop breadcrumbs for a little path so they can see a way through, and then let them choose however they want to get there. I mean, that's the thing.
Oh my gosh, you brought up so many little gems in that. And I think, we started talking around the resilience side of that, and how these different things help us to support to be better in that way. But I also think you brought up an issue, or not an issue, but like a concept around something that that I'm very much into, which is the pioneering of leadership. I think that, part of this new approach is leaders that are willing to pioneer. And for us to be able to pioneer, again, it's curating those safe spaces for those to have a voice, but those to have a voice that can think differently and use different pieces to innovate new solutions that are actually going to be sustainable at the table. And I think we don't necessarily do that well, throughout the leadership landscape. I'd love to think, how can we do that better? Like, obviously, you're in a place where there is no other choice but to do that. And so it empowers people to actually use their brains, start stepping up and going, well, what have I got in my hand? What is the problem? What can I bring as a solution to this, right? How do we do that in a better way? Because I think, that I think this, that I feel we're missing out on a massive piece because people aren't innovating in new ways because they've kind of got stuck in, like I said, they're not thinking, or they're going, well, this is what I've got to work with. And I'm like, actually, we've got so much to work with, and so much, I always hear this thing of, oh, I believe there's nothing new that you can create and do and bring. And I go, well, actually, I think there's the fact that we've got all these resources that we didn't have at one point. This means then if we join these resources, that has to come up with something new. Like, to me, that doesn't make sense in a lot of ways, and I've heard it. I think, yes, if you keep to the systems and you keep to the sort of the norms of how to do things, yes, we've come to the end of that. But I still think that, and I have to go back to the brain, because I have always been fascinated with the brain, that we have all these brain cells that we don't access. So to me, that means there's a heap of brain cells in my brain. There's a heap of brain cells in your brain, Juliet, that haven't even been accessed. And maybe it's because we haven't stimulated that. Maybe it's because we haven't wired to that piece, because there's no need for it, because you function well without wiring to that. What if we were able to find that? What would we be able to innovate because we were accessing different things? And I think there's that innovative side of us that, I don't know, in a place like where you are, it builds resilience because you have no choice but to do that. But we kind of get lazy sometimes. And I think in the new approach of leadership, it actually helps to increase this, so that this becomes the norm, to think out of the box, to think, what have I got? What can I bring? And I think that's when people really stand in who they are and run their race. Any thoughts around that?
Well, I think you just said that pretty perfectly, actually.
Oh.
I answered that.
Oh, okay, good. But here's, I really do. I really think that there's this whole piece of pioneering that is kind of scary. It's that uncomfortable moments, right? Where it's like, okay, if we are to be the role model and then have followers coming, because that's what I feel like a leader is, someone that has people that are following, that are coming on that journey with you. How do you do that? And how can you be more creative in the way that is actually going to bring the solutions that the world is looking for, in, like you said, are kind of ready for something different? How do we do that? And how can we be more effective in that way? So we can grow brain cells, says Michelle. We can, Michelle. That was a very smart comment. Knowing Michelle, and she's going to get at me when I get off the score. But that's the thing, right? We do have all these brain cells. I've seen it proven, even just in my son's life and in my life as well. Where my brain was wired, my sympathetic nerves weren't talking to my brain, and I had to really access, other brain cells to go, actually, this is the real wiring that we need to go to, because that's the wrong wiring and it's giving you the wrong signals, and really work out how that is. But that's because, and here's the thing, I did that. Same with my son, half his brain damage, speckles of brain damage all over, not meant to function, definitely not meant to talk, because all of his talking side of his brain was totally brain damaged. Dude, I can't shut him up these days, like when he gets talking, he gets talking. I love my boy. He's amazing. He's also almost 21. And, here's the thing. Because he learned to wire to different brain cells in his brain so that he could create different pathways and then get different results, right? That's where I feel a lot of our leadership, we have been so wired to a certain conditioning, so wired to certain biases. What if we now look at how can we wire to a different pathway, and then together let's go on that? And that's what these conversations are truly about, is going, well, what are those pathways? What are those ways in which we can wire to better patterns to then get different results? What do you, or how do you do that in what you do? How are you wiring to different patterns?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I look at it that clearly because I'm not. I'm very creative. I'm kind of very creative and very messy thinker. So I can discern sort of systems, but I actually sort of sometimes get lost in a kind of big messy. You know, I actually love a big creative mess because I think the way I look at it is there's lots of threads and you can pull on different ones, but I can't see necessarily where they all lead to. And so to me, to kind of pattern something is very ordered. How
do you even get the messy bit though? Like, as in, is that just because your brain's firing off in all different avenues?
Yeah, I think so. And also remember, as a consultant, I've been trained to see different options. So I'm kind of the options girl. I see 1,000 options. It's also somewhat of a gender difference, but typical example, it drives my husband nuts because he asked me to navigate from A to B. And I'm like, well, you could turn left here and then you can turn right. And then at the third thing, oh, wait a minute. Oh, you could have gone right back there. And then you can go left here. And then he's like, just tell me the way. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out the best route. He's like, well, you don't need to figure out the best route. You just need to figure out a route. And that's interesting because as a consultant, generally the best route was what was required, not a route, but the best route. So I got kind of into a habit of overthinking there. But yeah, I mean, I just think that now I've lost the question, haven't I? Because I've just
you haven't. It's all good.
But I
think that's exactly it, right? Your brain does work like this, and that's why you lose the track of it, because your brain's like, yeah, and I've got this and this and da da da, and there's so many. But we need to have people like you at the table that do think like that, right? That are thinking like that, and I think that's why you need other people at the table that maybe can take that big scrambled thinking, all those ideas, put them on the wall, and then go, hey, this sounds good. This sounds good. Now we've got 3 options. What do you think out of these 3, Juliet?
Absolutely.
And bring that back down to going, okay, and this is the one that now we've chosen this one, and let's execute on that. That's why we need different people at the table. We need, different distinctions at the table, because you can think that big. Do you know what? Not everyone can think that big, right? And to think that scrambled and that innovative, but we need that at the table. Now, in places that could be frustrating because they're like, oh, she keeps coming up with all these ideas, all this thing. But that's, again, you've got to be in the right environments that actually encourage that. And I think part of this new approach to leadership is that we have places where that is actually the norm. I like to think of it as, and that's why, the incubator concept is so important to me, because I want to hear those things. I want us to be able to hit things out the wall and then go, okay, out of that, do you think that would be the one that would get you closer to from problem to solution? Yep. Okay, now let's work on that piece. That's where I think, it's got like a scientist in a lab. They don't just go straight in there and go, ha, this is how we do this experiment, right? And this is the result we're going to get at the table. They throw a lot of things into those incubators and all those different things, and then they come out going, no, that wasn't quite right. Let's do that all over again. And I go, dude, can we not just anyway. But that's what we need, right? Because we need people that can do things like that, so that we can come up with maybe different ways in which we can move forward more effectively and efficiently.
Indeed. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. So, for example, to give you another example of the project I'm working with, COFEMA, one of the big challenges we're facing is that the country's running out of oxygen. Now, interestingly, this has happened in almost every country in the world that's had a massive COVID increase. The UK ran out for a while and was running very low. India very quickly realized that this was going to be a problem and preempted it by declaring that anyone with an industrial oxygen canister could repurpose it for medical oxygen. They're bottled in a slightly different way to guard against impurities. So you can't normally just take one without kind of extra vacuuming it and cleaning it and making sure that you change the regulator, which is the gauge, etc., so that there's no oil that gets breathed in. So Zimbabwe, we've got this problem running out of oxygen, and so are many other developing countries. And a group of engineers in South Africa came up with this idea: well, why don't we take a valve from a ventilator, one of those big hospital ventilators that are super complicated, not a kind of bodged emergency ventilator as such, as a proper old ventilator, and we'll put it on the oxygen mask. And you know what? They've saved so much oxygen. So a canister of 9.2 kg, which under COVID patients use much more oxygen than regular patients who need oxygen because of the damage to the lungs. So an averagely sick patient on COVID who needs oxygen therapy can have the biggest canister they sell in Zimbabwe is 9.2 kg of oxygen. It's a pretty big one, but that only lasts 11 hours. And with the mask, it can last 56 hours. Now, this is really critical, and it's not just about saving the pennies. It's about the fact that the oxygen factory, there's one in the country, and it may be 300 kilometers. It may be a 6-day journey from where you are. So how the heck are you going to change your oxygen bottle? And there aren't enough bottles for you to have two. You might not even get one. You might even have a smaller one. But it's taken this global pandemic, and oxygen shortage has been around in Africa and other countries. It's not been a problem in the West, but it's been around in developing countries for decades.
For a long time.
Yeah. Decades. Yeah. And only now have somebody come up with this seemingly simple idea. I guess it was super complex boffin engineering. I don't know, but it's never been done before, and it kind of seems bizarre that we didn't. Again, maybe that goes back to our talking about patterns and habitual thinking, that we don't think that we need to improve it because now it works and it's cheap, and so people who can't afford oxygen, that's their loss. I mean, I don't think people actively go around thinking that, but that's the end result of it. So yeah, it's just amazing how much innovation has had to come out now in a kind of challenge with a crisis. Basically, we've had to come up with these new ideas, but I feel like some of them were there all along. We just didn't ever really put the conditions in.
Yes.
The conditions.
Or maybe the drive wasn't there because it's like all of a sudden it's become a massive thing and it's brought to attention, right?
And it's personal. I mean, we're all in it.
And it's personal. There you go.
That's a very interesting point I see here, and in other places. There are huge disparities. There are some enormously wealthy people who could afford buy their own hospital, seriously, or fly to anywhere, except the borders have been closed. And if there's no oxygen in the country, there isn't even any in their private hospital. And that's a bit of a comeuppance, really, for some people, because they've never really been in the situation where my health depends on your health.
Yeah,
right?
So true.
And my money won't shield me, and so that's it's been quite an interesting realization amongst certain elites, very super elite sectors, and it's kind of just leveled the playing field a bit, as it were. That sounds a bit callous.
Isn't that interesting? Wow. All right. Here's the crazy thing. We've almost up on our hour that we normally do the decision table. So I want to start finishing now. I think I got you on early just so we can talk for longer. But, because we talk a lot, and I know there's been amazing gems that have come from what we've said today. I know that, we've talked about things like resilience. We've talked about things like, help me out, Juliet, things like collaboration, innovation, things that, conditioning and variables at the table and all sorts of things that kind of, can propose a little uncomfortable situations, but really, can help also build massive resilience in us. And as leaders, to be new role models and to be different role models, I guess, and to curate these spaces that help to build leaders that are resilient, I think is a massive thing that's come out of it. If people want to know more about you and what you do, how do they get hold of you?
Well, I guess this is being broadcast on Facebook in the first instance.
It is.
So you can probably look me up on Facebook just under my name, Juliet Le Breton, and you'll find links to the various projects.
You shall know me as Juliet Libra.
You shall know me as Juliet. Because that is my name. I actually had a very funny conversation the other day with someone, when I said the other day, it was yesterday or the day before, who said, do you like to be called Jules or do you like to be called Juliet? Because some of my family members call me Jules. And I said, well, when I was a teenager, I thought Juliet was a really embarrassing kind of, basically very posh sounding name. And I didn't like it.
It's very posh.
It's very posh. And so Jules was a bit better because anyone could be Jules, right? Jules is kind of like, and it was cool, I thought, as a teenager. Anyway, then a few years later, I actually thought, well, Juliet's quite a pretty name, and I quite like it, really, and it's a bit different. And, I know more people called Jules than I know named Juliet, so I kind of tried to switch back. And this guy said, oh, I see. So you just decided, sod it, I'm going to be posh. And I went, yeah, sod it, I'm posh. So there you go.
I always think of you as posh. Yes, posh. While you're doing those quilts that we talked about earlier on in this conversation. Okay, so one of the things I do ask everyone on the decision table is this question, and that is, from our conversation today, what is it that you're going to take from this? Maybe it's a new insight or confirming something or an action that you're going to take. What are you going to take from our conversation today?
I think it's really important. One of the things that you affirmed for me, it's really important for leaders to build other leaders, because that to me is a sign of a good leader. So to be building these characteristics of innovation, of resilience, of cultural flexibility, and being able to see things from different points of view, I think it's important to make sure that whatever I do, I am bringing up, I'm helping, I'm inspiring, and I'm kind of helping to create conditions for someone to see a little behind the curtain and to see what's got me this far, and maybe to make introductions for them. Basically, to make sure that at all times there are 4 or 5 people. They may not be the same people for decades, but at least that I'm helping, then take the next step forward or to see a way forward.
Love that. Yeah. And I think from our conversation, what I'm going to take is, the whole role modeling of, this approach with the innovative side of it. In other words, what is it that you've just got in your hand that we're not thinking about because we keep getting stuck in sort of, well, this is the way it's been, or this is how it needs to look like because the systems tell us this, everyone else tells us. And I go, we get so stuck in the old school of, style of leadership where it was just very telling. And I think part of this is this new approach is this innovative piece that, sometimes people go, oh, but innovation's so overused. No, innovation is just so exciting. It creates opportunities. There's so much possibility within innovation. And I think, how can we bring the sexy back, but with innovation, right? Like, how can we bring that back into creating real spaces where innovation is just the norm in it, that you can come with all those scattered brain ideas, and we want those in the pot. And then we know how to then pull it apart and go, hey, let's just take one of those and go with that. Because I think that's where, in that incubator of becomes such, the opportunity for possibility. And I think sometimes we miss out on that because we've forgotten how to do that, or we're not encouraging, or like you said earlier, empowering people to be able to do that. And to be able to do that also means then that we have to create resilient leaders, because when you think differently, and I know, and when we've thought differently, that has not always been the most accepted way to think. It's not the most loved way. People won't always understand you. I've had so many, and so many in my world who haven't understood what I'm talking about, let alone supported me and had my back. I loved how you started before we came on here, and you go, exactly what I'm going to say, that those giants. I said, I love having the giants because you mentioned, oh, I love how you got those behind you. And I go, I love having them behind you. And you go, yeah, they've got your back. And I just thought, how cool is that? That is such a, like, I'm never, ever going to forget that now. Like when I look at them, because I'm so visual, and that's why I love having them there, because there's times when I go, what am I doing? Why am I saying this? I feel like I'm hitting a wall, whatever it is, right? And I go, yeah, but look, there are some people that have made amazing footprints, and those are great, but we should be springboarding off that in creating these amazing footprints forward as well, and in leaving a legacy behind in our own worlds. And I love that. So I've got some great giants behind me who have got my back. That is so good. For everyone that's listening today and being a part of it, Tanya says hello, by the way, Tanya Allen. And you know, thank you for coming and being on here and listening and being, you know, I think that, you know, Juliet, for you, thank you for coming and being a part of here. You know, it's not always comfortable, even you being on the other side of a screen with me. And I know that, and you know that I'm going to ask questions that are going to make you squirm. But girl, you squirmed well today. And because of that, you know, I believe that because you're willing to do this, others have got insights that they don't use those as lenses to look through. They haven't got that perspective because they're not in the places that you are in, haven't had to work through some of the things that are uncomfortable for you. You know, that is, I just think that's so hilarious saying that. So that's why I'm bringing it up again. That uncomfortable moment. Anyway, you know, you're an amazing woman who has got a huge heart, and you know, you often are doing work that is not thanked or seen on the outside, but you do it a lot behind the scenes. And I just want to say, you know, I see you as an amazing human being who has a heart to bring much global change across the globe. And you do it with what is in your hand, and you keep wanting to do more, and you keep wanting to think you are one of these people that are coming up with all these crazy ideas, and then you start acting on. And I think that is the difference between you and other people, is that even when it looks like you can't do something, even when you go, how do I do this in the environment that I'm in? Even when you go, I've got no more energy to give, you keep having this resilience. And to me, that is part of, you know, this leadership. If more leaders could be like that, we would see much more change across the world. Now, one of the things that I think you can do better is, and I can say this because I know her well, is collaborate more with other people across the globe that have resources, that have tools that can support you. And, you know, if there are listeners, then reach out and find out how you can help Juliet to grow what she needs to do in her own little backyard, but also just for the work that you do and continue to do across the globe. So such a privilege to have you here on the decision table. Always a privilege to have you in my life, whether as client, whether as friend, whether as a collaborative partner. You know, I love you in my world, and I'm so grateful that you came on today. And I know it's extremely late where you are, so even more grateful that you're on here. And so if you have loved this on the decision table, anyone, anywhere, and you are either on here or watching the replay, make sure you share this, because, you know, part of you being able to share this, Juliet, is that those who are watching, those that are, you know, have got things from this as well, you share this, we can get the word out more. We can spread the word and create an awareness that is that ripple effect across the globe. So thank you, Juliet.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Kerry Marie. What an absolute honor to be someone who walks alongside Nelson Mandela behind you and those other giants. And they've got your back. And in as much as I can, I have to. And it's just been such a pleasure chatting. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. So if you were to leave everyone with something that is there something else you wanted to say? Is there something that you would love them to remember more than anything?
Go forth and prosper.
This is the moment where you have a deep and meaningful, piece of, droplet of wisdom.
Droplet of wisdom.
Yes, that Juliet. I know it's in there. Bring it, girl. You've got it. I've got your back, girl. Come on.
I can't think of a droplet of wisdom, but I did just want to comment that we didn't quite get back to it. About the unused, there's so much potential in everybody in terms of even brain cells that are not being used, new brain pathways that can be forged, so much potential in every human person. So whoever you are, whatever situation you're in, I believe in you. Kerry Marie believes in you. I know plenty of other people will believe in you. Lots of people love you. It's just, please try and believe in yourself and just take that next step forward. If you need help, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. And then also just, did you know, Kimberly, you probably do know that you have brain cells in your gut lining. So your brain isn't even just in your brain. You have these intelligence cells all over your body. And so it's way more than just discovering underutilized parts of your brain. Intelligence is, I believe, in a collective intelligence, a collective human intelligence. When we work together, that's when we seem to have even better ideas and even better solutions and more creative solutions. And it's not just the patchwork quilt that we talked about earlier, where you bring one piece and someone else brings another piece, but kind of new ideas come and nobody really knows where they came from. They came from the universe, they came from God, they came however you believe them. But they do, something new gets created in that moment. And so that's why, as you said, collaboration is critically important, and I do believe that, and I am aware that I'm not the best at it, but here's to learning and growing and getting better.
I love that. See, there's the gold, everybody. I'm ending this broadcast now. Stay there. Don't go away, Juliet. I will speak to you after I stop the broadcast. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Bye.